It starts like an ordinary day. You wake up, reach for your phone, and do what billions of people do first. You check the internet. But something feels wrong. Your messages don't send. Your YouTube won't load. WhatsApp shows connecting forever. You try mobile data. Nothing. You restart the router. Still nothing. You step outside, thinking maybe the signal is weak. Then you notice something strange. Your neighbor is standing outside too, staring at their phone. A few houses away, someone is shouting, "Is your internet working?" Within minutes, the street feels different, quieter, confused. Then the next layer of reality hits. A shop owner says the card machine isn't working. A delivery rider says the app is down. A bank security guard tells people the ATM is offline. At first, you think it's a normal network problem. But then the news comes through, the only thing still working in many places. Radio. A serious voice says, a major solar storm is impacting global communications. And suddenly you realize, this is not your internet provider. This is not a local outage. This is the planet. Most people see the sun as gentle and predictable. It rises. It sets. It warms the earth. It makes plants grow. But the sun is not a calm lamp in the sky. It is a violent nuclear engine. Inside the sun, temperatures reach millions of degrees. Its surface is a sea of plasma, charged particles moving like boiling water. And sometimes, the sun releases energy so powerful that it can shake an entire planet. Two events matter most. Solar flares. These are sudden explosions of radiation. They travel at the speed of light. That means when a flare happens, Earth can be hit in about 8 minutes. Coronal mass ejections, CMEs. These are the real monsters. A CME is when the sun throws billions of tons of plasma into space. Imagine the sun launching a cloud of electrified particles. A storm moving through the solar system. If that storm hits Earth, it can cause something called a geomagnetic storm. And that's where the real danger begins. Earth has a protective magnetic field called the magnetosphere. Without it, life on Earth would be exposed to radiation like Mars. The magnetosphere normally deflects solar wind. But when a CME hits Earth, it slams into this magnetic shield like a giant hammer. The shield doesn't break, but it vibrates. And when it vibrates, it creates powerful electric currents. These currents don't stay in the sky. They travel through the ground. They travel through long metal structures. They travel through power lines. This is called geomagnetically induced currents, GICs. And these currents are the hidden reason the sun can shut down the modern world. Because modern civilization is built on electricity. And the sun can inject electricity into places it doesn't belong. Most people imagine the internet as invisible. Like air. Like magic. But the internet is one of the most physical systems humans have ever built. It depends on giant data centers full of servers. Fiber optic cables across cities. Undersea cables connecting continents. Cell towers. Routers. Switches. Satellites. And above all, power. Here is the key truth. Fiber optic cables carry data as light. So people assume solar storms can't affect them. But the cable is not the weak point. The weak point is everything around it. The power supply. The repeaters that boost signals. The landing stations where undersea cables connect. And the data centers where your cloud actually lives. A solar storm doesn't need to burn the fiber. It only needs to destroy the electronics and power systems that keep the network alive. Now, here is the part most videos don't explain properly. A solar storm does not delete the internet forever. But it can create a kind of damage that takes a long time to repair. Power transformers can burn out. And these transformers are not like light bulbs. A large high-voltage transformer can weigh hundreds of tons. It can take months to manufacture. It can take weeks to transport and install. So if a major storm destroys many transformers across multiple regions, the blackout could last weeks. In extreme scenarios, months. And if electricity is unstable, the internet cannot function. No power means no cell towers, no routers, no data centers, no banking networks, no online communication. At that point, the internet doesn't just slow down. It disappears. And when that happens, something terrifying becomes clear. Modern society is not addicted to the internet. It is dependent on it. Now we know the sun can cause a global technological crisis. But the biggest question is, has this ever happened before? And the answer is yes. In part 2, we'll explore the solar storm that shocked the world, and the near miss that could have destroyed modern life in 2012. To understand how serious this threat is, we need to travel back to a time before Wi-Fi, before smartphones, before satellites. Back to 1859. In those days, the world had only one global technology network: the telegraph. Telegraph wires stretched across countries like the first nervous system of civilization. And then, in late August and early September 1859, something happened that terrified people. The sky began glowing. Not a normal sunrise glow. The night sky turned bright with auroras, shimmering curtains of light. People in the United States reported that the aurora was so bright they could read newspapers at night. Auroras were seen far from the poles, even in places like the Caribbean. And then the telegraph system began behaving like it was possessed. Operators reported sparks flying from telegraph machines, papers catching fire, operators receiving electric shocks, and telegraph messages transmitting even when the power was disconnected. The world's first electrical network was being powered by the sun. This event is now called the Carrington Event. It remains the most powerful geomagnetic storm in recorded history. And it happened when the world's technology was tiny compared to today. Now, imagine the same solar storm hitting Earth today. In 1859, the biggest network was the telegraph. Today, the biggest network is everything. The internet is not just entertainment. It is banking, emergency services, hospitals, air traffic control, supply chains, navigation, weather prediction, military communication, and power grid coordination. A Carrington-level storm could cause widespread power transformer damage, satellite disruptions, GPS timing errors, radio blackouts, and failures in long-distance communication infrastructure. And here is the terrifying part. A modern disaster would not be a clean-off switch. It would be chaotic. Some regions might go dark completely. Other regions might experience unstable power. Some services might work partially. Others would fail suddenly. It would feel like the world's digital brain is having a seizure. And when people lose communication, they panic. Because without the internet, modern society loses coordination. Now comes the part that should make your stomach drop. This is not just an 1859 story. In July 2012, the Sun released a massive coronal mass ejection. A CME so powerful that scientists later said it was comparable to the Carrington Event. The storm traveled through space and crossed Earth's orbit. But Earth was not there. We missed it. By about 1 week. In other words, if the Sun had released that CME 7 days earlier, it would have hit Earth directly. And we would have experienced the largest technological disaster of the modern era. A former NASA scientist described it as a perfect storm. This was not a Hollywood scenario. This was a real event. A real solar superstorm. And we survived only because of timing. This is one of the strongest proofs that the threat is not imaginary. It is statistically inevitable. Now let's talk about the part of the internet most people never think about. Undersea cables. If you send a message from Pakistan to the USA, it doesn't fly through the air like magic. It travels through fiber optic cables on the ocean floor. There are hundreds of these cables. They carry international video calls, cloud computing traffic, online banking, social media, and global business communication. Now, here's the surprising truth. The fiber itself is not easily damaged by solar storms. But undersea cables rely on something critical. Repeaters. Repeaters are devices placed along the cable that boost the signal over long distances. And these repeaters need power. That power is supplied through conductive elements in the cable system. A strong geomagnetic storm can create electrical surges that damage repeaters, landing stations, and the power feed equipment. If multiple landing stations fail, whole regions can become isolated from the global network. Even if local internet works inside a country, international connectivity could collapse. So the internet doesn't just slow down. It can fracture into disconnected islands. Now we reach one of the most overlooked dangers. People think GPS is only for maps. But GPS does something even more important. It provides precise timing. Modern systems require perfect time synchronization, including financial trading systems, banking networks, mobile phone towers, internet routing equipment, power grid coordination, and even some data center operations. GPS satellites carry atomic clocks, and their timing signals keep the modern world synchronized. A solar storm can disturb the ionosphere, disrupt GPS signals, cause timing errors, and in severe cases, damage satellites themselves. If GPS timing becomes unreliable, the internet doesn't just lose speed. It loses coordination. Imagine a global orchestra where every musician suddenly loses the conductor. Everything becomes chaotic. So now we know 3 terrifying facts. 1. The worst solar storm in history happened in 1859. 2. A similar storm nearly hit us in 2012. 3. The internet has weak points, cables, power grids, and GPS timing. But the biggest question is, what exactly happens step by step when the sun hits Earth? How does it go from a solar flare to a worldwide internet blackout? In part 3, we'll follow the chain reaction, and it gets scary. When a major solar event happens, it doesn't arrive as one simple punch. It arrives in layers. The first layer is often a solar flare. A solar flare releases high-energy radiation, X-rays, and ultraviolet light. That radiation reaches Earth in about 8 minutes. It doesn't burn people on the ground, because our atmosphere blocks most of it. But it does something else. It disturbs the upper atmosphere, especially a region called the ionosphere. The ionosphere is a layer filled with charged particles, and it's critical for radio communication, GPS signal travel, and some satellite links. So the first sign of a major event can be sudden radio blackouts, GPS errors, airline communication disruptions, and satellite signal instability. In some cases, pilots have to reroute flights away from polar regions because communication becomes unreliable. This is the beginning of the chain reaction. It's like the sun is testing the system. Now comes the second layer, the CME. Unlike flare radiation, a CME is a physical cloud of plasma. It can take anywhere from 15 hours to 3 days to reach Earth depending on its speed. When it arrives, it collides with Earth's magnetic field. This collision compresses and shakes the magnetosphere. And this shaking is what generates the dangerous currents. Think of Earth's magnetic field like a flexible shield. The CME hits it. The shield bends and vibrates. And that vibration sends electrical energy into the planet. This is where the event becomes more than a communication problem. It becomes an electrical engineering nightmare. Now let's talk about the real weak point of civilization. High voltage transformers. Power grids are designed for predictable electricity flow. But a geomagnetic storm forces unwanted current into the grid. This extra current can cause transformers to overheat, saturate, vibrate, and in extreme cases, fail permanently. Transformers are not protected like your phone charger. They are giant industrial machines. If several transformers fail, power stations begin shutting down to protect themselves. That creates a cascading blackout. One region goes down. Then another. Then another. This is not theory. It has happened before on smaller scale. In 1989, a geomagnetic storm caused a massive blackout in Quebec, Canada. Millions lost power. Now imagine a storm 10 times stronger. The danger isn't just no electricity. It's damaged infrastructure that takes months to rebuild. And here's the key point. The internet cannot survive without stable electricity. Once the grid becomes unstable, the internet begins dying in layers. Step 1. Mobile networks weaken. Cell towers have backup batteries, but those batteries last only hours. When the batteries die, towers go offline. Step 2. Local ISPs begin shutting down. Internet service providers rely on powered equipment. If power is unstable, their systems fail. Step 3. Data centers go into emergency mode. Major websites like Google, YouTube, Facebook, and banking services run in data centers. These centers have backup generators. But generators require fuel. If the blackout is widespread, fuel delivery becomes difficult. And data centers are not designed to run for weeks without a stable supply chain. Step 4. Undersea cable landing stations fail. Even if the cables are intact, the landing stations need power and functioning routers. If they fail, continents lose connectivity. The world becomes separated into disconnected digital islands. So even if your city still has some power, you may not reach the global internet. You might only reach a broken local network. Now we reach the part that turns this into a global crisis. When the internet becomes unstable, it doesn't just affect entertainment. It hits banking. ATMs fail. Card machines stop. Online transfers freeze. Stock markets shut down. Supply chains. Ports lose tracking systems. Warehouses lose scanning systems. Delivery networks collapse. Fuel distribution slows. Hospitals. Hospitals have generators, but they rely on digital patient records, networked diagnostic systems, cloud services, and communication. If networks fail, hospitals can still save lives. But everything becomes slower, manual, and risky. Emergency services. Police, ambulances, disaster response teams depend on communication networks. If those networks become unstable, response time increases. And in a crisis, minutes matter. Now imagine all of this happening at once. The world doesn't end. But it becomes disorganized. And in that disorganization, fear grows. Because humans can survive without internet. But modern society cannot function normally without it. So now we understand the chain reaction. Solar flare atmospheric disturbance. CME magnetic storm. Magnetic storm grid overload. Grid overload power failures. Power failures internet collapse. Internet collapse financial and social chaos. But here's the question that matters most. Can we stop this? Or at least reduce the damage? Because if this is inevitable, then the smartest civilization is the one that prepares. In part 4, we'll talk about solutions and what you can do without panic. Solar superstorms are terrifying, But they have one advantage over most natural disasters. They don't come without warning. Earthquakes strike suddenly. Tsunamis can arrive fast. But solar storms travel through space. And space is big. That means scientists can often detect a dangerous solar eruption and estimate whether it's coming toward Earth. Space agencies and observatories monitor the sun 24/7, including NASA, NOAA, Space Weather Prediction Center, ESA, and many national space programs. They track sunspots, flares, and CMEs. When a CME is launched, satellites can observe its speed, its direction, and its magnetic orientation. If it's heading toward Earth, warnings can be issued. Sometimes the world gets 12 hours, 24 hours, or even 2 to 3 days. That is valuable time. Not enough to stop the storm, but enough to reduce damage. If a severe geomagnetic storm is predicted, power companies can take protective actions, such as reducing load on the grid, temporarily shutting down vulnerable lines, changing transformer configurations, activating surge protection, isolating certain regions to prevent cascading failures. Satellites can also be protected. Operators can put satellites into a safe mode, shutting down non-essential systems to reduce the chance of damage. Airlines can reroute polar flights to avoid communication and radiation risks. So the problem isn't that we have zero defense. The problem is that defense costs money. To truly protect the grid, countries would need upgraded transformers, better grounding systems, more surge protection, and spare transformers stored for emergencies. But spare transformers are expensive, and they take space. And politicians often ignore threats that don't happen every year. So the world remains partly protected, and partly exposed. If solar superstorms are inevitable, then the long-term solution is not fear. It's engineering. The future internet could become more resilient in several ways. More decentralized infrastructure. Right now, the internet depends heavily on major hubs. If key hubs fail, large areas lose connectivity. A more decentralized network means more local data centers, more redundant routes, and fewer single points of failure. Better protection for undersea cable landing stations. Landing stations can be hardened with surge protection, backup power, and isolation systems. So a geomagnetic surge doesn't destroy critical equipment. More robust satellites. Satellites can be built with better radiation shielding and fail-safe electronics. This won't make them invincible, but it can reduce loss. Alternative timing systems. Since GPS timing is so critical, networks could use backup timing sources. Ground-based atomic clocks, regional timing networks, and multi-satellite redundancy. So a GPS disruption doesn't break everything. This is the kind of invisible engineering that could determine whether a future storm is a disaster or just an inconvenience. Now let's make this practical. You don't need to become paranoid. But you should understand one thing. If a major storm hits, the most difficult part won't be no internet. It will be confusion, lack of information, and breakdown of normal services. So basic preparation is smart. Here are realistic, calm preparations. Keep some cash at home, because card payments may fail. Keep a power bank charged. Keep a small battery radio. Save important phone numbers offline. Store key documents locally, not only in the cloud. Keep a flashlight and basic supplies. These are not doomsday steps. These are the same steps you would take for any large blackout. Because in a solar storm scenario, electricity is the main issue. The internet is only the first thing you notice. Here is the most important truth. The sun is not evil. It's not attacking us. Solar storms are natural. They have happened for billions of years. Earth has been hit by storms far bigger than anything humans have ever recorded. The difference is this. For most of history, solar storms created beautiful auroras. Today, they can create technological collapse. Because we built a civilization made of electricity, microchips, satellites, global networks, and fragile synchronization. So yes, one day, a solar superstorm will strike Earth again. It is not a question of if. It is a question of when. And when it happens, it may cause the biggest internet blackout in history. But the future does not have to be hopeless. A prepared world can reduce the damage. A smarter grid can survive better. A decentralized internet can recover faster. And people who understand the risk will react with calm, not panic. Because the real lesson of this story is not fear. It's humility. We are a technological species living under a powerful star.
Subscribe Info Beyond Borders now for more mind-blowing knowledge.